Namaste and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sat means truth, Logos means study or science. It's a true antonym of mythology, which means myth is a Sanskrit word which means a fake lie or an imagination. So, mythology, you can understand what it means, a study of fake lie or an imagination. Somehow, the connotation of mythology has become ancient history, which is not true because the histories from Vedic scriptures, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and also Purana, some of the Puranas, have astrological, archaeological, as well as proofs related to the culture as well, which is surviving even today in the countries where this culture predominantly originated. So there is a lot of proofs over there. But today have a very, very special guest, and we are going to talk something totally different, which will be very, very interesting to many students and also people who are watching us from YouTube. Also, it will be very interesting for them. Why a certain political party, which is very popular in India, thinks in a certain way. But most important, what is important for India today? That is very more important, much more important than that. So, without delay, let us welcome a great friend and also a very senior person and a strategist and also a guide to many, many politicians, Sri Nishith Sharan.
Thank you. Happy to be here with you, Adit.
Thank you so much, Nishith. You're always welcome. So, Nishithji, before we get started, the India has a unique thing amongst Americans. Americans love India. The one thing they love about India is Indian clothes, Indian prints, and also they love the culture of yoga and meditation, which is, we have so many names we took. And one thing they can tell you, all of them have gone to India multiple times, most of them.
Wonderful.
On their own they go, and they don't go to the Bombay or the Delhi or anywhere else. They go to Rishikesh, Varanasi, and Bhubaneswar, and Chidambaram, the city of Chidambaram. These are the places they people go. Thanjavur, these are the places they
All
go.
right.
And and so the real attraction for India is not in the cities or anything else. I'm talking about people to people connections, which is in these places. So uh, so before we start off, so can you tell us like what India should be known for amongst these people?
See, India is too many things, if you ask me. And it is a case of bad branding also. India could have stood for a lot of things, but unfortunately, it doesn't stand for any one particular thing universally. Some people look at India from the ancient history and Vedic angle. The other look at India as an emerging IT participant in the global IT industry. Then people look at India as an Asian economy which is trying to reach beyond its weight now. And then India is known for a whole lot of other things. Uh, but India really is not something which you can define by one nomenclature and say this is India. India is India is far too vast. It is far too diverse to really be addressed in any one word. Adit.
So in your role as you play a very important role for Indians, and in a public service also, you play a very important role. Now, when we talk about the Indian strategies, now the biggest thing comes to the mind is the geopolitics of India, geopolitics surrounding India, and which is what we see Quad, and America is trying to engage India because of various things. But what does India think of it? What does Indian politicians think of it?
Essentially, Quad is a reactive exercise to what has been happening in the South China Sea and with China predominantly. And it tends to alarm a lot of countries to the way China has been dealing with the South China Sea problem. And this Quad association is kind of being built as something which will tend to contain the balance of power in that place, and allow all the other countries like Australia, India, US, and so on to have a more equitable relationship with China without letting China really rule the waters in South China Sea, which is debatable in any case. So Quad comes across as something which is going to be of interest to the larger South Asia area, plus the other countries of the West which are getting involved with it. But it is early days. I don't see anything major or concrete happening as of now. It is a tentative process, probably build up over the next couple of years, depending on lot on how the geopolitics of this area pans out in the future.
You put a very good point, because that's the main reason why the Quad is there. And the so coming to the internal, like the India has helped so many countries, and we have viewers from Chile, viewers from Venezuela who are watching us right now, and they many of them got vaccines from India initially in the first phase, and they're very happy with the quality as well, because India gave them one of the best when they needed it most. Then India helped them, and most of them are very thankful. Also, many of them are twice vaccinated. Also, some people are typing right now. Now, so this really helped the world, and but in the second phase, India faced some challenges on its own. And we all know the reasons for that also. It was sudden and it was such a large scale, widespread. Now,
Yes.
the education system in India, in the education school system in India, was closed for a year. And that is also some good policies they have done. They have postponed the exams and all those things they have done.
Yeah.
Now, what are the real challenges which you feel, according to you, are from for that India is facing today?
See, unfortunately, the political mapping of India today is a uh, bit of a conundrum between what India should be doing and between what political parties would want India to do. I think we were pretty much on the way with after the first phase. There were warnings which were issued by the central government to various states to gear up for a possible second phase. And a lot of sanctions, approvals were handed over to the state and to the states as a federal structure, where the states have the authority to execute a lot of things in their domain. But these were kind of not taken very seriously, and most of the setup which should have been done maybe 6 months back was not taken up on priority. So when the second wave hit us, and it hit us really hard, we were ill prepared for it, despite having known that it is going to happen, despite creating the resources to meet that thing, second wave. But we were not really prepared on the ground, because a lot of other states really did not believe that it is going to be a very acute second wave. We thought it would be similar to the first wave, and we survived with a lockdown and isolation. So probably we don't really need to go overboard in terms of doing it. Apart from the bureaucratic lethargy and political lethargy of people who govern states, this has been a major problem. But India's learned a hard lesson this time. They've really faced a massive outrage, a lot of pain in people, shortage of vaccines, shortage of medicines, shortage of oxygens. And we are very grateful to the world and a lot of countries who came back and helped India in various ways, helping us with oximeters, oxygen plants, liquid oxygen mechanisms to transport them. So I think an alarm bell has gone off in India, pan India, I would say this time, and every state, every corner has realized that they need to be much better prepared for the future. And a third wave of whatever magnitude it happens is an expected thing. So probably we'll see in India much better placed in terms of the third wave to deal with it, Second has been quite a painful affair, almost across the country. Adit.
So, good point you said, and America said in the Congress, Anthony Blinken said that they have provided aid worth $500 million to India, total aid, including the military aid also.
Right.
And an American government is committed to help civilians in India through government to government route, which is very good. Also, many of them are also watching now. So, thank you for giving that report to us. Now,
No,
the
India is
next.
thankful for all our friends who have helped us, including America, which has been very generous of them and much in time. Thank you so much.
Yes. So one of the things which comes to the mind is that you said about the internal preparedness is much more stronger. So in the states you mentioned, so the if the when we talk about the federal structure which is similar to the US because state has different laws, like in the
Yeah.
US it has separate taxation also, additional
Mm.
taxation, and there is one federal tax also. So how do you think that relationship in India works between the federal and the state? And before we move on to the next question.
In normal times, it works beautifully. We normally don't have any situation where we have a face off with the states. Most of the things are aligned very well and they continue happening. They've been on for the last 60, 70 years now. We've not faced major problems. But priorities for states tend to vary between one and the other. In certain areas, and by and large, I think India has not had healthcare as a major political priority for any of the parties that is in politics. It is there, but not really given the kind of importance that it needed to. And we did not have a pandemic of this nature in the last 100 years, so we survived. We have been doing okay. But now this pandemic has created a separate set of priorities, and most states will now have to align themselves accordingly and get ready for it. I think they'll be more forthcoming in terms of having this federal relationship between the center and the states and getting more things done instead of bickering and having differences.
In the last term, the last president of the United States upgraded India's status in the US as a developed country. Publicly, he said it, and it was documented
Mm.
also because India has a large economy which can self-sustain. And so over the years, they have done a good job that they have made the economy to the point that they are now becoming net exporters than importers.
Right.
But we also see another aspect is unemployment rising very high in India. And because of many factors, like a country of the size of India cannot rely on an export oriented economy. It's a large country. So the internal trade is far more important than external trade also.
Yes. Yes.
And so on those areas, how do the policies work?
See, by and large, the good and the bad both is that India has never been an export-led economy in all its times since the independence. It is an economy which is driven largely by the domestic consumption, and because of that, India has been much more resilient to the vagaries and changes of the global economic situations and surviving it with a large cushion of the domestic markets, unlike other countries where the exports have been very, very important for them, for their economy to create substantial profits for the nation. Now, given what has happened in the last 1.5 years since the time the pandemic happened, Indian economy, which was growing at a very good pace, has taken a certain amount of beating. I don't go by the figures that the world institutions quote, but the way we see things around us, they were very upbeat. There was a lot of mushrooming of small businesses, which was which take care of the lower middle and the middle tier of the economy, and it is totally domestically sustained. But because of the lockdowns of the almost the last 1 year or 15 months now, on and off, These people have really not been able to sustain as well, because in a shutdown, all your worst things that can happen to you start happening. You run out of your savings, you run out of clients, you encounter a change in the landscape of how things were happening earlier. So a lot of changes are there on the cards, and I think India will have to go through a grind to really come across and figure out how it is going to be post pandemic. But yes, those challenges are there, and I don't think any of the governments has a ready-made answer to how they'll tackle the situation. It is going to be tough, but India is resilient because it is domestically led. I think over the period of time, a year or so, we should be able to get a grip on the situation and get going.
Yeah, that's a global phenomena. Even the US economy shrunk by almost 7%. So it's a global
Yes.
phenomena. Indian economy also shrunk by 7%. So there is nothing surprising there. On an average, most of the countries of the world have a growth of negative 7%. That's an average all over
Yeah.
the world. So the India is also not out of line there. Now coming to the focus of the job creation. Now, American economy is heavily dependent on job creation at the lower levels because that's what moves the economy.
Right.
90% of American businesses are also small businesses. Same is the case with India. 90%
Yeah.
of businesses are small businesses. And that's a healthy way of looking at it. The reverse way of looking at it is Chinese, where the 90% of businesses are state owned. So, which is a totally different scenario. Same is similar the case with Russia also. Is around 60% Russia in case of Russia, 60% because it's a very small population, 145
Yes.
million people. So
Yeah.
their majority of economy is large companies driven. Now, when we talk about small businesses, we have heard many encouraging stories from India on various schemes were launched. For this is the first time I think in India, a last person was given a facility of a bank account. That it may be very surprising to Americans, but many Indians did not have a bank account, and a huge success was achieved over there, and a huge success was also achieved in the case of health insurance, which was also given.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that those policies which were launched 4 or 5 years back have
Mhm.
strengthened now, or they have shown their true power now in this case of pandemic, or do you think those policies and everything have suffered a setback during this pandemic?
I think, Aditya, they are a work in progress. One of the most exciting initiatives that the government took, and which I personally found very helpful with a lot of people. They are these small little traders who are probably trading in green groceries on a daily basis. They go to the wholesale market, pick up their material, then they come down and vend vegetables, let's say. Okay. These guys don't have the capital to trade for a daily basis. If they need X amount of money to go and make purchases today from the wholesale market and come and sell it back, they make a decent profit, but they don't have the resources to be able to do it on their own. So the government started an initiative called Mudra, where these people would get a small sized loan without any paperwork or without the need for a guarantor, and they could take uh, maybe $500 worth of uh, loan available to them. And it kind of suddenly changed the way they used to operate, because what they were doing earlier, they used to take money from loan sharks. They would take money at maybe 5% per day kind of an interest, borrow $500 and return $525 in the evening kind of a situation. And they never thought they'll be in a situation where they will have this money and be able to avoid it, because that 5% really kind of gives them a 33% more income on whatever they were doing. So these kind of initiatives have worked very well, and people have taken the advantage of that. There's been really positive impact of that. But during these pandemic lockdowns, they have been the ones who have been hardest hit, because small vending outlets, uh, people operating small one man shops, stores, they have been hit the worst. And now there should be some kind of a thing by which you'll be able to revive them. And I think the government is seized of that objective. And surely some kind of a thing will be done where easy finances would be made available to them so that they can kickstart their business all over again.
Yeah, the America thrives on easy loans. That's what America works on. In fact, America is the world's biggest FDI consumer, who many people do not know that
Right.
80% of the world's FDI flows into the United States. And somehow they've created that infrastructure and the law and the judiciary in such a way that the money flows in. I'll also quote one line from Mahabharata, in the case of economics over there, where the world used to come to India or that region, Bharat, in a much bigger sense, because there are two important things over there: truth and justice. Those were the golden barometers of success, and that's what America has also followed in terms of financial responsibility. If you work with an American firm, by law you will get paid by law, otherwise they can be penalized within the country. So those safeguards helped American businesses thrive on the principle. The world over, people want to go to trade with American firms because they know American firms, they can sue an American firm in America even if they are from other countries. It
Right.
has disadvantages also, advantages also. Because disadvantage can be that somebody else may have ulterior motive to take over an American firm. But the
Right.
advantage is that the Americans uh, get products get sold. Now, in India also, the rule of law is very prominent. Most of the Americans should know also. The rule of law is very strong there, and there's a big protection available to the investors in India also. So now, tell me, like in this context, tell me that what are the economic policies or the framework that is available in India today, or what can be improved to create an economy which, since India is a not export oriented economy, so domestic consumption is important. So what is needed to make it grow faster for everybody?
Two parts to this. One is you can grow the economy without really helping the common man achieve much. This is the institutional investment kind of a thing which gets invested into very large corporations. They create their businesses, probably export from there, and they contribute to the exchequer, but don't really help the common man on the street to in a way that changes his life for the better. The other side is that if you invest largely in the bottom side of the chain and get those people going, so from making farming a more productive, more profitable exercise, to the small traders who's associated with it, that entire supply chain of goods produced being brought to the market and getting consumed up to the cities. This is the belt where, if investment is done, you will see a very large part of the population getting benefited out of it. I don't really find the institutional mechanism too exciting, because it happens in any case, but it happens in a manner which is insulated from the common public, and it doesn't reflect into the lives of the people who get affected. But if you invest in the bottom half of the pyramid, you'll see a whole lot of change, and that is the way to go in the future. This is my feeling.
Another aspect comes in the interiors of India, which we have seen a lot of wealth and a lot of information going to the cities, and the cities have huge shopping malls, which many of us have experienced. And but in the villages, it's a totally different story. And I love villages more. I in the US, I live in a village. It's called Bonita. It's a beautiful village. But the in India, the villages have been sort of neglected during this pandemic times also, and during this, which is, you also said, it is a responsibility of the state. The infrastructure is missing. We get reports that there are not enough ambulances over there, not
Yes.
enough reach out is not happening, and practically the surge of pandemic has been ignored over there. But as a policy of the state, which is the agrarian economy, India is 65% agrarian economy. How do those benefits reach, or what are the problems and the challenges facing the rural India right now?
See, India, the hinterland of India has been a very saving oriented economy in any case. It is very unlike the cities where people like to earn more, splurge more. The villages, they want to earn, but it is a saving led economy. They don't spend too much money. They like to save for the rainy day. And consequently, they have been insulated from what happens in the cities in a major way. As far as the infrastructure, the facilities to the public, healthcare, government support systems, etc., they are happening at a rapid pace. But given the sheer size of India, it is a long way to go. We have, for example, in the healthcare, we have primary healthcare centers in villages, which is their first point contact if something goes wrong. But these are very preliminary kind of places where you may have one doctor taking care of the entire population with a short support staff of a couple of nurses or a ward boy to support him. But in a situation like a pandemic, when it becomes very widespread, even the best of the cities have not been able to cope with the numbers that came in, because ultimately it is all derived on a percentage of facility available. And if it suddenly shoots to 10 times that, it is not going to happen. So in the rural India, this has largely been the case. There are meager facilities, and yet the numbers have not been as bad as the cities till now. So they have sustained. But if this wave were to become very rural intensive, then it's going to be a very, very bad scene, because it will be almost impossible to create infrastructure or to put your resources into villages at a point of time when the pandemic is raging.
During this pandemic, America has also realized they need to have a mixture of savings-based economy and capitalist economy. They've also realized. And the savings are being encouraged across everything in the US also. Because in the crisis like this, the federal government cannot fund everybody's check. Even though they transfer $2.3 trillion to people's account, hardly anybody has received it in America also. So many of the Indian viewers may not know that it is not an ideal situation here also.
No, it is not. It is not. Cannot be.
Cannot be.
No
Humanly not
economy can
possible.
sustain it.
Exactly. No, nobody can sustain that. Now, coming next to the point is the India's investment in the IT sector in a big way in India, but we only see the and this is where I would like to ask you also. The India has not seen a infrastructure that can sustain Indian entrepreneurs, because most of the entrepreneurs are using in the IT sector using American or foreign servers most of the times. So when you host your technology on American servers or app stores, then becomes American in a way. And that's why Chinese have their own ecosystem, Russians have their own ecosystem, and Japan has their own ecosystem. Europe has their own ecosystem. So what is being needed from the strategic point of view? And I can tell you firsthand, because I deal with this all the time, tell you firsthand that if you do not have your own stores, your entrepreneurs won't succeed much. You can say they're becoming entrepreneurs, but they are still dependent on somebody else to give them money. So what is your view on that?
What you said is very true, and India needs to get that act together. They need to have their own set of infrastructure in the IT business. The second thing which I feel has helped and hurt India both is that with the advent of the early IT companies in India, the Wipros and the TCS and Infosys of the world, what we have not really not done is that we don't own softwares, we don't own solutions. Largely, we are a process oriented IT industry. We help others achieve their goals in a cheaper way, in a more efficient way. And that is the domain that India has been operating upon. But you see, the wealth creation happens when you own your own things. And this is where India has somehow not gotten its priorities right. These are very profitable companies who have been doing great work for like 40 years now in IT. But if you ask them how many patents do you own, how many softwares do you own that uh, lead their domain or they lead the world in the kind of work they do, you'll rarely find any of them. So that has been one major drawback. And I think it is gradually now becoming obvious that India would want to do its own set of India owned apps as well as the infra, because you see we are undergoing a bit of a relationship issue with Twitter as of now in India, and suddenly you find that a lot of help is available to Indian companies who want to get into that domain and do something. It may happen, it may not happen, but the point is that the focus is now shifted by the Indian government as well as the IT entrepreneurs to start really looking at what they should be doing in terms of owning their own stuff. They can be a Weibo in China, but a parallel has to be created for the country as a backup at least, or as a viable other alternative in India for the Indians. So these are areas that we need to start working upon more seriously and pave the way in a manner so that it becomes easier for entrepreneurs to take up such projects, execute them, and get a decent valuation out of them. And I think the Indian IT ministry is looking at this very, very seriously.
The social media apps, which the most of the countries have their leaders, especially the politicians.
Yeah.
If an American congressman joins a foreign app, they have to give that report to the US Congress.
All
Anybody,
right.
any
Mm.
MP, any MLA, like we have congressmen, we have state legislature assembly, state assembly, and also state senate. Any
Yeah.
assembly member, senate member, congress member, or these Capitol Hill senators also, they have to
Mm.
report to the American Congress if they join a foreign app. Now, but in India and in China also same situation, Russia also same situation. You'll not find a Russian president's American embassy operates a Twitter account, not the Russian. It doesn't operate from Kremlin.
Okay.
And but UK is a UK and USR. You can consider them as one state. I have a joke. I call UK the 51st state of US, Canada the 52nd, and Mexico the 53rd. So these are the client states of the US and
Mm.
Australia and everyone included. So the West and but if you look at other emerging powers, other like China, everyone, no politician is on foreign apps, and that's how they send their message across. Their ministries can be there, but they are not there themselves. So in the case of India, the culture is reverse. People use Gmail, which is hosted in America, obviously, and
Mm.
and use Gmail freely. Even the big
Yeah.
politicians are Gmail, so all their
Yeah.
correspondences can be
Yes.
easily checked. 2 minutes,
Yeah. Yeah.
if somebody has to check that. And these are
Mm.
private correspondences, can be very serious matter. What is your
Yeah.
view on that, on those policies? Because this is what it gains others the access to your data.
Adit, the official government communication is not on external servers. It is on National Informatics Center is the domain. nic.in are the domains on which the entire government system works. All official government data, conversation, exchange happens on the NIC. It does not happen on the Gmail. Gmail is used largely in political context by people who are not representing the government, or people in government who use it as a personal email ID and use those servers, but not their official communication is not on Gmail.
I I'll this is not the topic of the discussion, but anyway, I will cover it next time. But you have been very well known to you have the pulse of the people. You know what they're thinking, and that's how you help others. And so, what is your general view in your mind when it comes to American social media apps, which is Facebook has data and location of every single person from India, 400 million people from
Yeah.
India, which is a large population, and
Yes.
it is 30% of Facebook's data, 30%, and all the pictures being exchanged, everything is there, and
Yeah.
it is coming in the and in America, NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health, produced a report that the Facebook is the number one cause of mental distress in America, and this is a professional body, NAMI,
Right.
North
Okay.
American Mental Institute. Now, it has data published for the US government that it is creating depression, mental disorders, and narcissist behavior, which is not helping others because people post any picture over there.
Yeah.
That is going to the Indian villages now,
Yes.
and people are sharing, and people do not know what is happening. So, in that world, is there any controls over there where people can be safeguarded, protected?
I think the first of the issues that is being handled by the Ministry of Information Technology by bringing a more transparent understanding for these international platforms to operate in India and to become liable for what they do over here. I think the whole sense of feelings of the human mind, how it impacts individuals for their mental health, social health, how they change their behavior. These are things that have not really seized the government as of now. But over a period of time, I think they will need to address it because it is a phenomenon which is being seen everywhere in the world. People have become narcissistic. People operate the social media for at times about 7 8 hours a day kind of time they spend on it. The youth is totally engrossed in it, so they've lost all urge for outdoor activities or to academics, and this temporary high of being on the social media and doing something has become an international affair. And I think Indian government has to look at it. It has not yet really started looking there, but I think they can't escape it. Over a period of time, they'll have to look at it and figure out a way how to control it. This is a global problem.
And particularly, this international media has been used to demographically or democratically alter people's will through propagandas. Different types of
Yes.
propagandas exist. It happened with Myanmar, and Myanmar is a much smaller country. India is a totally different position. It's a highly productive country. People do not know it's the second largest military industrial complex after Russia in Asia, bigger than anything else, with ordnance factories and other. So all these information plus the election information which is being used, just to tell you that there is a Florida, the government of Florida
Law that has come up.
law has come up. They are going to fine $250,000 for every instance where a politician's voice is banned, but they don't talk about the normal people, just the politician. So there are
Yeah.
a lot of ordinary people also getting affected over there now. So how do you think that which is a security threat for India and for other countries also? How can the government stop this to protect their own political structures?
Not an easy subject to come to a conclusion on, but my initial feeling is that we need to have something which will take away the absolute controls of data and what goes on the platform from the operator itself. If they have a say on what goes onto the platform, then they have to become a party to any liability that arises out of that. Either you are an intermediary or you are not. So that indemnity of being a intermediary cannot be given to platforms who actively control the content that goes on their platform. That makes them a party, and they should be penalized for it. I think the changes that the Indian law has made in the last couple of months, uh, the result of which is the tiff with Twitter that we are having as of now, is this: that Twitter would want to have a control over the content that gets posted. They have the authority to deplatform somebody on their whims and fancy without being answerable to anybody at all. With that kind of authority, they have to be held liable for what goes on the platform also. So that is a thing for which the Indian government has started taking action, and a law has been promulgated in which they've asked all these.
We lost your video.
One second, just give me 1 minute.
Yes, yes.
Can you get me now? Yeah.
Yes, yes. So the
So
next, yes, please continue. Yes.
So the indemnity with the which the platforms have been enjoying till now is not something that we can allow the platforms to get away with without having some kind of a control mechanism, a redressal mechanism for people who are on the platform, and what they create as part of the content. So that change is already happening, and I think the Indian political system is way too resilient to allow a platform to really dictate what they can do with content in a political manner. So much before we have any of the major elections coming in, I think we'll have a framework available where we will be able to address the situation.
Uh, India being a very ancient country and a hub of education, the Indian universities were founded when Europe was still struggling to find their identity. The Nalanda, Takshila, major
Right.
universities in India have been
Yeah.
existing, large ones.
Yes.
Now, one of the things has been the American education policy structure, which is 10 plus 2 plus 4 plus something else, whatever people want to do after that.
Right.
Now, the problem with that is the intellectual capacity. Now, intellectual capacity of India has been well recognized. And there's a joke about Indians in the America is they can, if their Indian is there, then they're going to win the spelling bee contest. It's always been a fact here. So now coming to when it comes to India, with the intellectual capacity much higher because of the language and many other factors, eating habits, the maturity level which a child in India can see in 14 years is much higher than the rest of the world. That is a established fact. Even in China, that is a matter.
All right.
So the education policy which India has launched, which is to conform with the Western standards, also to make it degrees on par, uh, doesn't stand for everywhere. Like I'll give you example of Japan. Japan has a different system,
Right.
and where the worker becomes available, or the person becomes available to the industry at a much younger age, and they start learning over there and they're studying over there.
Right.
The content becomes more important than the structure, because you have to design for your own country. And once you
Right.
sign an international law, you can always say that my 2-year degree is equal to your 4-year degree. And that's how we can create parity. Now,
Right.
in that space, the content which India has gained over thousands of years plays an important role in building the. So, in the education policy, when we talk about, what is your view on how to make a Indian worker or a person education system such a way that the person comes out with the proper identity, with the proper values, and also uh, into the employable group of people. What can, like, all these factors play an important role.
Adit, we like to talk about the ancient education system that we had, but we normally miss on the fact that we have really not learned anything out of it. To what we have currently is something which was designed by the British for their own objectives way back 100 years or so. It really does not draw any inspiration or any uh, assets from our ancient learning system. And it has become a stepping stone which is very ritual oriented. So, a typical student in India has to go through the 10 plus 2 plus 4 as well, and he has no clue what is he going to be doing after that 10 plus 2 plus 4, because there has really not been any qualitative edge which is pan India. So there are certain institutions which deliver very high quality students, but the rest of them are in a very mediocre level, and some of them have been very, very ritualistic with what they do in terms of education. Education, I feel, has been one of the major disappointments for me in successive governments. We really haven't seen them doing anything major with it. And there existed a very big possibility of what could have been done with all the things that our ancient systems made available to us, from systems, mechanisms, pedagogies, and all of that. That is no longer used. It is there for history to record and feel great about. But unless you draw upon it to make you, to help you create things for the current times and for the future, it is not going to work very well. So this is one disappointment that I have, and I hope at some point in time the Indian government is able to bridge the ancient to the future gap and create a mechanism where the education is not just a ritual, not just a degree, but you create human beings who have really enriched themselves with the learning that they have done. This is something which I hope, and I can only hope, that this would happen at some point of time. Currently, or in the last 50 years, I have not seen that happening.
All the countries who have become superpowers, they have maintained two things: their own cultural values and their own cultural identity. These are the two things which Japan has focused on, that despite being on the other side of the World War II, they have come back with a resilience and came up with their own system. And South Korea is another great example where they have retained their culture and identity. And they are one of the biggest trading partners of the US. In fact, many US brands are now South Korean brands, South Samsung and LG
Yeah.
and many other high, industrial complexes. Israel is also another example, but it's a much smaller country. It's I'd say one third of Mumbai. That's the
Hmm.
country size.
All
Now,
right.
so the culture and the identity and the values, you know, by the age of 14, a child is ready to be, Arjun was a great example, Pandu was a great example. By the age of 14, Sri Ram, all those examples we have, great examples we have, they came by the age of 14, they were all fully educated. And after that, what skills they learned is a life's lessons after that. And that was the education system there. Now, uh, in the case of India, we see that the early innovation always comes from the past. It is because nobody has seen the future. So you build on what you have. But if you forget what you have, or you're made to forget what you have, then you have no basis to grow on. It's gone. The benchmark is gone. So that aspect, you said it correctly, ancient learning systems is missing. Now, in the current systems, when we talk about, and one of the major organizations comes to my mind is Archaeological Survey of India, which was set up by Alex Cunningham and other people. Now, after independence, they have done a great job. I have had many people, KK Mohammed and the BR Money and all those people on this show, and they've done
Right.
many shows with us here.
Yeah.
They have done a great job. I just have no words what they have done. But they missed out one important thing. that they brought back those sites to life, but those places were went left vacant. The whole Nalanda University was spread in 100 square kilometers. 100 square kilometers. That was a spread of the city, and they have only excavated, according to them, 5% of that place. Only 5% they've excavated, and of which the major contribution has been Japan. But Indian government, if it was, I can tell you, if it was other governments, I'm not saying colonial, but I will say Japan and other countries which have retained their culture, they put a lot of money in those sites in their own country, so
Right.
that they bring people there to teach them what their ancestors stood for. And that aspect we have not seen so far. What is your view on that? What can be done over there? These museums is not the place where you learn. Museums is the place where you see what was the past glory. But restoring a place and me using it for the purpose it was meant for, it works. Japan has
Absolutely.
Japan has done it in Mount Fuji, and they have done a lot in other islands also. So what can India learn? And India and Japan have similar cultures, very similar.
The only difference that I feel when you talk of India and Japan, uh, India is way too large. Number one, India has too many problems. So our priorities, almost half of our priorities are directed to firefighting for our immediate needs and getting things done. And the major difference between India and Japan, despite cultural similarities, is the discipline that the two societies have. The discipline of Indian society, which was traditionally very strong, uh, through the period when the British ruled us, and for those 200 odd years, and that since that time, with the colonial hangover of the way the Indian government has worked for a long time, is somehow, I think the discipline part has been really pretty poor. There are pockets, there are individuals where that you find that kind of a discipline available. But if you say is the general mindset disciplined of an Indian, I would say, regretfully, no. Whereas the same thing would not apply to Japan. So Indian government should have been doing a whole lot of things. We have the archives, I think, which are second to none in the world. If you were to look at the Indian temples and the kind of architecture that existed, the construction techniques of 1,000 years back, I often challenge a lot of my contemporary friends who are architects and structural engineers. Can you make the working drawing of this existing temple now? And most of them, in all fairness, say we don't know. We can't do this with the same technique today. If we have to replicate it, we'll have to use separate materials, separate techniques to create it. But the same way, even if we want to replicate, we can't do it. So we lost a lot of these kind of things, and they've not even be acknowledged, because today, if you talk to most of the people who in the tourism world, they'll talk of India in terms of the Taj Mahal, the going to Goa, a bit of Kerala, and some of these things. Whereas if you actually see the architectural wonder of ancient India, I think that was possibly the one thing we should have been known for. And it would have been the biggest wonder for most of the people who are technically inclined to see how these kind of things got done. But then we have never done that. It never became the priority of the government. Probably they were too busy trying to feed the people and put basic systems in place and to get the economy going. So somehow culture has been relegated. Cultural ministries have been doing a very ritualistic job in India over successive governments, not this one or the earlier one, across parties by and large. So the mind frame of India somehow manages to miss culture, manages to miss education, managed to miss healthcare till now. Hopefully, now it is going to become important from for Indian politicians and governments to make healthcare more important and important agenda in their working. But somehow culture has been totally relegated. Education has been relegated. So there's a whole lot that can be done, but I don't see the intent and the commitment as of now to do those things.
No, you're right to some extent. You know better than me in any way, but in this area, the next the I'll tell you, in the US and other countries, it is a responsibility of the state governments to maintain the state identity. It's not
Right.
the responsibility of the federal government. So there are different laws. Federal government just focuses on large scale legislations for the whole country. There is a EPA there. Mostly their focus is on externals, like the external foreign policies and larger monetary policies. But the implementation, just like in India, US also maintains at the state level. And it is a state's responsibility to preserve their cultural sites and other things. And I can tell you, the vote, the democracy or the vote elections play very little role in that. It is the departments who run the country, and
True.
and that is the way India is also set up. They
Yeah.
followed American federal structure. Now the implementation is missing. So first thing what America did after they got the independence from Britain is to change everything reverse, from right hand driving to left hand driving,
Mhm.
and to that extent. And everything reverse. They removed the laws which were set up by British completely out. And India also got independence from Britain. US also got independence from Britain, and both similarities are there. But in the case of India, the one thing has not, and India is a new country, just 70 years, 75 years independence. It's ancient land, but a uh, new political
Republic.
system, a new republic. But the policies were made exactly reverse. Like you said, 1901 education policy, 1920 police, the British Imperial Police Act, still continuing. And so we are still living with the legacy of colonialism, but we have tried to Indianize it to a larger extent. Do you think those policies itself need to be questioned now?
Absolutely. There has to be a clean reboot on a whole lot of things. Otherwise, you can't have changes made to something which is ongoing. There should be a point when we draft these new policies tailor-made for the Indian population, Indian history, background, and to the national goals of India. Where are we going from here on? You need to ask that as a country and devise your roadmaps to fit according to your objectives. Now, this kind of an exercise, which has the major buy in even of the common people, the voters, their expectation from their local representative upwards on how these things should be done, has is a very large democratic exercise, which is scary even to imagine that this could be undertaken. But I think that is the only way it will ever go, because no government will ever come and find that all these peripheral but important activities can become their mainstay of their politics, or they'll be the bigger driver for the electoral results. No, it will not happen. So somewhere you have to light a fire which kind of makes this into a more mainstream objective for the people, and then it starts happening. uh, a very small example, if you see, um, Gujarat in India, and they did this statue of unity there for Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and suddenly it kick-started a discussion around the national heroes of India and who are the ones who have been kind of neglected and they need to be given that space in the consciousness of the nation. And you find that people start discussing it, it becomes important to them, because there is an example that you can now relate to and present as a case study. But similarly, when you go to all the other places, you find that either they have very small local relevance, where the local government may be doing something which is probably a little more than the bare minimum that they can do, but compared to what all can be done, it is still way too far and coming anywhere close. So these are the things which may become important for India if a discussion of this order becomes commonplace with a majority of the Indians. And that gets set when your basics are taken care of. You have employment, you have sustainability, you have your daily bread, butter, and needs taken care of, your immediate needs of education, healthcare, etc., sorted. That is the time when all these things become important to the common man. Minus the involvement of the common person, they will always be peripheral for the political parties. And I keep going back to political parties because eventually they form the government and they are the ones who decide the priorities for the people. So I think it should be done, but can be done, I doubt, because we have to still cross a lot of water before we can start talking about prioritizing all these things.
So, do you think there should be a school for the politicians or would be politicians in the schools first?
In Indian context, and I always tell this take this example when I'm talking to people who are interested in politics. You see how a politician emerges as a politician in India, and having had some understanding of India, you'll be able to relate it very simply. So you become active in your college days as taking part in the student union or being part of heading some committee or something like that. You gain prominence from there. If you are very good over there, you get known at the industry, at the university level. You pass out of there, and the closest thing is that you become a corporator, which is a local area representative. Okay, because you are this guy who can garner the support of X number of students in the university, so you will get those votes. From here, if the guy still has it in him, he becomes a member of legislative assembly, which is the state uh, body. And if you're still better, then you go up to being a member of parliament and probably be somebody who can contribute to the national ministries and government. Not tell me in a scenario where you have a success rate of less than 0.01%, where does this guy have the time to get to learn what is governance, what is development, what is political science? He's learning only through his life's experiences in trying to go ahead from one level to the other. And when he reaches there, he suddenly realizes that he has to draft the development plan of my area, or let's say the economic rejuvenation of my area, and he has no clue how the economy works. So he relies on the officialdom. He has these officers who are insulated from the democratic process because they are government employees, and they advise him. So irrespective of who comes to power and goes out of power, 90% of the things don't change because they are still run by the way the officers wanted to run. So yes, there should be a proper training institute for politicians to learn the basics of what they're supposed to do if they were to be in power, which is to understand what is development, how does it impact the human life, how does it change the quality of life for its people, how do you impact economy. At least have some basic understanding. From there you can evolve. But they really, for the 30-40 years career they have as a politician, they start off learning how to get votes, and they end up learning how to get more votes. But that is the sum total of their evolution as politicians.
No, a very good point, and I know we're up the hour now, and this is just the last point I'll ask you, and then we'll probably would like you to come again and go deeper in other topics. We'd like to invite you again. Now, the the you mentioned, and the American political system is mostly the same. Only the difference is that the most of the politicians who work up the ladder here also, they go through the mayor and the council member, mayor, and then they go on up. And the administration is completely different. Administration is
Yeah.
elected as well as employees. There is no such system of IS officers in India because that's a colonial system
Yeah.
where you have another body trying to run the administration of
Yeah.
the land. Now, there is no such system. Only for the foreign office they have the training. Other than that, they do not have. They are career diplomats, but not career politicians. And
Administrators.
yeah, career administrators they do not have. They are elected positions. Like the
Okay.
police is also elected. So it's called sheriff. Is an election he has to run, but he has
Hmm.
to be passed by the American Police Academy. That is, they have to do.
Right.
Similar to India also, and that therefore the titles are all the same. Every officer has the same title, and you won't see the hierarchy. There is a sheriff or 3 star, 2 star, 4 star. That was again the colonial concept.
Yeah.
Only in the armed forces you have that, and that
Hmm.
too on an experience. So so do you think that the entire the structure, because the state gets its power through empowering people, not
Right.
that's how the
Right.
state gets their power.
Hmm.
Now, do you think that aspect has been missed out somewhere, or
Completely. Completely. The crying need for India is a judicial reform and an administrative reform and a police reform. All these things that we have today are remnants of the colonial era, and we have continued going with them with minor tinkering and refinement. I happened to be with one of the very senior secretaries, IS, uh, in the state of Uttar Pradesh at one point in time. And over an evening of dinner, I asked him, um, so what do you get to learn as an administrator when you pass into the Indian administrative service and you are trained in uh, your job, and then you are consumed as a deputy collector or a collector, and you start going up the ladder. So what do you know? What is your core competence? Can you tell me what is the school of development that you've learned from? What do you think is development? He was candid enough to admit, we all define it the way we think it is right. But really, there is no school of thought for the entire organization that this is the national goal, this is the meaning of development for us as officers when we go into the field and start our work. Okay. Similarly, so what do you do? I asked this very senior IAS officer. So, what is the role that you play? He says the biggest role that we play is that of a shock absorber between politicians and public. That we keep everything down to if not the lowest common denominator, maybe a little better than that. But we insulate the public from people who can make it, elected politicians who can make it very bad for them, or somebody who's very optimistic and wants to change too many things and may mess it up because of that. So we do not allow both the things to happen. We follow the rule by the book, and we make sure that we get the politicians to follow it. Now, this is a system which is designed for status quo. It is not designed to achieve goals. A system which was designed to achieve major goals quickly would never have this kind of an approach. But this is the approach that we have had for the time since the British left us and continued with them. So there has to be a major reset on administration, judiciary, police, and you can make it a lot more accountable, much more fast moving. But we'll need a huge political capital to be put into it for somebody to take the risk of trying to change things, because status quo is what they drive on and what they thrive on. They don't want changes.
true? I think that's you really hit the crux of the issue, and I think we are top of the hour. Nishith ji, it is a great honor to have you,
My
and
pleasure,
also
completely.
a great pleasure. And looking at the response of the people, it's phenomenal. They all want you back. So we'll continue this in the further discussions on the same topics that we left here. And thank you
Right.
all for joining who are watching this show. Do also watch it on YouTube when it is available for public viewing. And let us know your feedback.
Thank
Namaste.
you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you.